Hello, everybody. To all of you who are watching the recording, welcome to the first Network Manager Community Circle Community Circle session. I've already messed up in the first 30 seconds of the recording. The first thing that I wanted to mention is that we have a feedback form here, which is a funny way to start the session, but we are all about making sessions better and making them collaborative. So what I'm going to do is I've included a link to the forum so that you can complete them after, and any of the links that I shared today will actually be included in the feedback form itself. These are all hyperlinks, so you can go to them directly. And without further ado, I'll get started with the session. The first couple of things that I want to share with you before we dive into our conversation with our panelists is a little bit about the resources that I wanted to share. So firstly is our Open Publishing Handbook. If you are or are not aware of this, this is a joint customer success and marketing initiative at Pressbooks. So we are joining forces. I am joining forces with our marketing team to put out content that's not just a manual of how to add an image or how to export your book, but rather it is about what we have learned at Pressbooks from all of you and the best practices that you have achieved at your institutions. And we've put something together so that people can learn more than just how to click on things in the Pressbooks platform. So today's session is more or less based on this guide chapter that our copywriter Eden wrote. And it is about how to quickly get your program set up so that you have results, so that you can, keep your program going, keep your funding alive, and make your program succeed. So if you haven't looked at this yet, I'd recommend that you go and look at it, because A, you might have learned from that, you might learn from this, or B, you might have found that we have taken inspiration based on the work that you have accomplished. So the central focus today is about OER implementation, and it supports a lot of the things that we cover in this guide chapter. The second thing that I want to mention is our Pressbooks community forum. So all network managers are invited to join the Pressbooks clients page if you're not already a part of it. I know you can see many of your own faces down here, and you can share conversations about how to do things on Pressbooks, and we also share important things about new things at Pressbooks. So for example, our product manager Steele writes updates about the product up here. And if you are not yet a part of that, we have the invitation link right here. And if you click on it, you can automatically join, which is really great. I would also highly recommend that you go and have a look at our panelists' Pressbooks networks, and this will help you draw some inspiration. So and you can sort of see what each of them have done with their respective networks. So Quantland keeps it pretty simple. It'll take you directly to their catalog, and there's a link to a couple of their programming stuff here. The Nova Scotia Community College, they have a more in-depth homepage, and there's a couple of different things that they have done that helped them succeed. There's a catalog here with a bunch of the different books that they have worked on. They have many, many books, and if you actually go on the Pressbooks directory, they also have many books on there as well. And same with Maricopa. So Maricopa also has a plethora of books, and same with Quantland. I don't want to undermine the amount of work they've done. All of them have a lot of books. And if you look at this, we also have just released our new catalog. We know that you've been requesting this a lot. And if you go to our product update on Thursday, Steele will talk more about this, but you can see and explore the books that our panelists today have administered and the programs that they have sort of curated to be able to produce books of this caliber. And for today's discussion, I wanted to really make sure that we had a variety of different voices included. So I wanted to make sure that a community college was represented, a consortium was represented, and your standard, whatever that means, university was included. So that's why we have our panelists. Obviously, Lynn could not join us. Hi, Lynn, if you're watching this. But hopefully there will be something for all of you to take away from today's session. And if you are not pleased, please leave us feedback in the feedback form, and we can go from there. So enough blabbering from me. I now want to turn over to our panelists so that we can get the conversation started. And at the end, we can also, I'd love it if all of you who are watching currently can also share a little bit about your program, or want to ask our panelists questions or ask each other questions as well. So the first thing I wanted to start is very simple. What are your institution's quote unquote open goals? And I will turn over to Amanda.
So at KPU, we're fortunate to have support for open at the highest level, with open actually being one of the goals of our institutional strategic plan. So we have 9 different goals. I'll try to keep them short. So the first one is to support the adoption of OERs across all faculties and schools. Support and grow the Zero Textbook Cost Initiative, develop a publishing infrastructure and system for OER development, provide tools, technologies, training, and support for faculty on open pedagogy, establish targeted open education initiatives to attract working adults, and provide program completion encouragement and alternatives for mature learners. We also want to articulate OERU courses and offer an exit credential to the OERU network. We want to develop an institutional open education policy. We want to embed and enhance e-portfolios that reflect open education strategies and the value of global open education practices. And finally, one of our institutional goals is to collaborate with external partners on these goals wherever and whenever we can.
That's great. Thank you so much. And I'm sure that this will relate very well to our next question when I ask that. But before I do that, I want to turn over to Debbie so that you can talk a little bit about your Maricopa's open goals, because there's 12 institutions that are held together by Maricopa. So I want to hear a little bit more about that as well.
So Maricopa I'll start by talking a little bit about Maricopa Community Colleges. So we are 10 in each 10 community colleges within the Phoenix metropolitan area in Phoenix, Arizona. Each of the Maricopa community colleges is individually and independently accredited by the Higher Learning Commission for the North Central Association of Colleges and Schools. So as you can imagine, each of those 10 different colleges really has their own their own way, their own interpretation, right? Their own flavor is how I usually refer to it. But at a district level, as I sit at the district, and so we're all part of the same district, and we are very lucky to have district support and institutional support at that level for the open education work across the district. But each of those 10 colleges really embraces or doesn't embrace the work differently, right? Based on the individual college. So our district-wide goals, we are currently going through some strategic planning, reimagining for our district goals. We've had an open education program in the district since, I'm going to say 2013, long before my time in Maricopa. And so it's time for us to revisit that and reimagine what those goals will the mission, vision, and goals of that work will be. We are transitioning away from really targeted focus on textbook cost and saving students money on textbooks to take a more inclusive approach to open education, to include more of open pedagogy and issues of social justice and diversity and things like that. So I will share, we have a set of shared design values, and there are a lot of them. There are, I believe, 7. So those shared values, and these are values shared across all of the colleges, would include access, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusivity, student focused, student success, community and collaboration, attribution, and innovation and creativity.
That's great, and it's really interesting because you are part of 10, whereas Amanda's part of just 1, but there's completely different. There's a different idea, at the institutions themselves. And hopefully this sort of sets a good precedent for the rest of the questions, especially surrounding Pressbooks. But it's always good to know exactly what you're up to so that other people can take inspiration from those values themselves, or can, align themselves with the values that your institutions currently hold. So thank you for that. So this sort of organically leads into the next question, which is, what has your institution done with Pressbooks based on those goals? So what is the main focus of your Pressbooks network? And I suppose, what are some ongoing projects? And we'll start in reverse order. So I'll ask Debbie first.
Okay, so we actually launched the Pressbooks at the very beginning of the pandemic. The pandemic hit, everybody went home, and I would say within 2 weeks we were rolling out the Pressbooks that had been in the works for months, right? So this was, what we thought was going to be a pretty soft launch, and everybody is already scrambling and doing a million other things. But it has actually been quite successful because it was kind of unintentionally, I think maybe because of the pandemic, because it also precipitated a real shift to even more online learning than was already happening. So there was a lot of scramble to find and use those ebooks, and the Pressbooks really helped make that happen for our faculty. And in terms of, like, we have lots of different, so we rolled it out with just an announcement of this, hey, there's this new tool is here, hey, this new resource is available, and information sessions, right? Come learn more, we want to tell you more, we want to educate you about this. But we are 10 different community colleges, and so we also prior to rolling it out, had worked with each of those colleges to identify a point person, somebody that could really champion Pressbooks in their local space. And so as we rolled it out and did district-wide announcements, we worked to include all of those individual college point people into each and every one of those conversations, so that we were able to really elevate and advocate for their skills and knowledge at their college. So it was really a two-pronged approach, right? One, it's a district supported tool, right? But we wanted the colleges to see it as not just another tool, right? Some of the colleges embedded it into their centers for teaching and learning and really embraced it as a tool for teaching and learning. Other colleges really absorbed it into their library space and have treated it more as another resource, kind of alongside the other library provided resources.
Yeah, that's really great to hear, especially because having worked with more and more consortiums throughout my time here. Actually, Debbie was one of our first clients when I started working at Pressbooks. So we go way back, but I know that has been a very successful thing. And we started asking consortiums to start assigning a point person after we realized how successful that was at Maricopa. So thank you for sharing that. And Amanda, I want to turn it over to you to ask whether those values have been whether you've been able to successfully deliver on those values using Pressbooks, or how KPU has managed to use Pressbooks.
Yeah, so one of our goals that I mentioned earlier was to develop a publishing infrastructure to support OERs, and Pressbooks is how we are accomplishing that goal. So we have our own Pressbooks instance, and even though if you go to our catalog, it only has 37 published books in it, on the back end, we've got over 200, some of which are currently in production, but many of which are just being used in a classroom and don't want to be in the public-facing catalog. So we've got a lot of Pressbooks going on, and Pressbooks is, like I said, we're using Pressbooks as the primary way to accomplish that goal. We've got other things going on for different types of OER projects. But Pressbooks is kind of the default standard. You know, we've got this system in place. I mentioned in my introduction that the Open Publishing Suite, so that's a collaboration between the Teaching and Learning Commons and the library. And we support OER Pressbooks projects from throughout the entire production process. So from the very beginning, consulting on different publishing projects and creating project plans and giving advice on how to make their project, all the way through to how to actually do publication. So arranging for covers to be made, or our librarian colleagues will acquire ISBNs to apply to the book. So we really cover any stage in the publication process we help with.
Yeah, that's really awesome, because to involve everyone else in this conversation, I know for a fact that having had so many conversations with all of you, that something that everyone mentions across the board is that, you know, if you have funding to hire, whether it be grad students or undergrads or you know, copywriters or editors, whoever that may be, if you have the budgeting or if you have the funding to do so, to involve more people, to not only relieve the burden off of yourself, but also to make, and it's also a great thing for people to put on their CVs. There's so many different reasons for why having more hands is always more helpful. So it's actually really great to put that into perspective, that, you know, you only have 37 books, which is in my mind so many books on your catalog, but to have so many behind you know, the public facing side, the private side, to have that many books is actually, it's indicative of the fact that whatever you have public facing isn't necessarily the be all end all of how successful your program is. So I appreciate you sharing that, both of you.
And just to follow up on that, like the books that aren't in the catalog that are being used, they are still open. They're published under an open license, but for whatever reason, the faculty may not be comfortable sharing it too widely or promoting it. So we want to respect that. So we don't include it in the catalog, but the book is still open and available and usable.
Yeah, that's really great to hear.
Amy, can I add on to that real quickly?
Yeah, absolutely.
And just share that our faculty are the same, right? Like we have a very small few books, relatively small books in the public facing catalog versus several books. I just looked, it was over 300 books behind that aren't public facing in the catalog yet. And it goes to that point that Amanda just said, right? Is that faculty are just not comfortable sharing that publicly yet, right? They want time to work, to test it out, right? To have their students experience it, to tweak it, right? And so that I just wanted to share that is something that we are also up against.
Yeah, and it seems like both of you are so intimately aware of what's going on at your institutions, which is awesome that I've chosen you two as panelists, because it speaks volumes to how sort of committed you have been to being committed to open, and also committed to being the administrators of your network. So I guess my next question is, being a network manager, what does that mean to you? And what has your general approach been to having a successful program at your institution? Sorry, I guess I should just call on somebody. I thought someone would start organically. Debbie.
Oh, sure. Start with me. So it started out with recognizing that here we have this new tool that the initiative that the district is providing, and really needing to support that, right? And so to work with those point people at the different colleges to build a network, to build knowledge, my own knowledge, as well as kind of to share that information across the colleges. So it really started there, and started with a recognition that, oh my gosh, we're providing this resource. We have to make sure that it's used in order to justify the continued expense, right? And supporting this. It's become, now that we have a lot of of folks really using it, and there's a lot more familiarity with the tool across all of the colleges. I would say the network manager role has become a lot more of troubleshooting point, right, rather than promoting, but answering questions or when problems occur that the point people at the colleges can't address, then it trickles up to the district level. But it also is a matter of crunching the data and finding, kind of extracting from the data information about who's using it, where are they using it, and how often are they in the books, and then sharing that back out with the colleges. So at least for us in this more of a consortium type model, that's what the network manager role has become a lot more for me.
Yeah, and I guess a good question to ask here is about Pressbooks, because obviously you managed to go from, no Pressbooks network to having, 10 colleges all sort of, to whatever varying degrees, work on Pressbooks. Do you feel like it's become easier to administer your Pressbooks network as you've become more acquainted with, more like better at the platform itself? Do you find that your administration has become easier because you've gotten better at Pressbooks, or do you find that it's not necessarily correlated?
It has become a lot easier because I am a lot more comfortable answering some of those questions for folks, because at least at the very beginning, I didn't know anything either, right? So I would get questions and I would go look it up really fast and then come back and answer them. And I don't have to do as much. I still have to do quite a bit, but not as much to answer some of those basic questions that I did at the beginning. But now it's more a matter of being able to look at it. And so I'm not looking at, it's not in use anywhere because it's brand new. Now I can look at it and say, oh, these X number of colleges have really embraced it and they're using it, and these ones haven't. I can really more focus my energies on the ones that haven't, and maybe bring some of those people together so I can go to those colleges that have embraced it and say, what did you do and how are you doing it and what worked for your faculty, and would you share those ideas with this person over at this other space, right?
Yeah.
So it is a lot easier for me because I'm not trying to build that initial use from nothing, right? I have something else I can build off, and I have data I can point to, so I can say, oh, look, this is how this faculty used it, took an open pedagogy approach to using Pressbooks. This is how a faculty got their students involved, or this is how a faculty adapted something, something that they had cloned in or something they'd imported in, and I can have those conversations. So it's a little different.
You touched on so many important things there. We don't have time to go into all of it, but I think that that's really, there are some, obviously this is a first very general session, but hopefully in the future we can explore more of those ideas about using the data that you have on Pressbooks to, further your program or to engage, get engagement or usage up. So I appreciate you touching on all of those things, even if we don't have time to go into all that right now. And Amanda, I want to turn it over to you because you are a librarian and you have a lot of experience in open, but you are relatively new to KPU, which had a very successful Pressbooks program prior to this. So I want to hear about what your experience has been to successfully upkeep a program that already had a big sort of past before you joined.
An interesting question. I think I rely a lot on my colleagues for their institutional knowledge and their experience, and they know what we have been doing and why we're doing it, but they're also really open to exploring new possibilities and ways that we can make the process better. I was thinking about your question about being a network manager, and with me and my colleagues, we're all librarians. So we approach being network managers really from that library lens. So it's a lot. So I think a lot of it is about like maintaining a collection, maintaining the catalog, and making sure that things are organized and that we have good versioning and with the ISBNs and stuff like that. So I think we really apply our librarian lens to being network managers. But outside of the network, when it comes to just having a successful program, there's a few things that we do, and this is a case where I wasn't quite sure, so I reached out to my colleagues to get their input on like what have we been doing to make it successful. So this is my input, but also from my colleagues as well. And I think one key to our program being successful is that there's a lot of communication during the project. We do regular check-ins on where a project is at and what support the project leads need. And then we also have the resources to dedicate specific people to supporting a project, so that there's always someone familiar to the project lead and always someone available to provide support and answer a question when it's needed. And then of course, monetary support through our grant program.
No, that's all excellent. And I think both of you actually answered one of the latter questions that I have, but it just means more time for questions at the end. But that's a really, really awesome answer, especially about the approaching it as a librarian, because I know that there are many of you here who are technologists, who are, IDs, who are librarians, who are even just faculty, not just faculty members, but are faculty members. There's such a wide array, and to sort of give new perspective into how you could be doing things, I think is really important. I did a presentation earlier this year at the Library Publishing Forum about how to get your program sort of off the ground. And I understand that I'm speaking to two institutions who have robust prospects and open programs and have support for open and may have a larger team than some of you who might just be operating as a team of one or a team of two. But I think the goal obviously isn't to try to aspire to do everything that our panelists have done, but rather you can also cherry pick exactly, what fits your purposes. Like if your goal is to publish one book by the end of the year and to have that public and openly licensed, and then that goal is sufficient. But I think that the sort of the strategies that you're touching on here can help with any size of goal, which is really awesome. So thank you both for taking the time to answer those questions. This one's really important. How have you been spreading the word about your program, and how have you been drawing people into your program? Because I think that's something that everyone is interested in, and everyone sort of has a different approach on. And Amanda, I'll start with you.
So we primarily spread the word through our various university communications outlets. So for example, we have an institution-wide daily email that people can submit posts or think topics that they want to LinkedIn. So we do a lot by that. But I would say most of our promotion is just word of mouth in conversations with faculty, as well as during special events or finding opportunities for interdepartmental collaboration. So I think that's the biggest part of it, is just talking to people about it. We also deliver workshops on various topics related to OER, and those get advertised again through those communications outlets and out on the website and things like that. And on our OER grant application page, we make it clear that OER grant applicants or recipients will be supported by Opus, and we kind of list the different things that we do. So we try to make it very clear that Opus exists and they have access to us. And
sorry.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's like incentivizing people to join by saying, this is available to you, this support is available to you. So if you join, we will support you throughout this time is such a great way to sort of spread the word, but also to sort of follow through on making sure that if someone knows that they're actually intrigued enough to maybe sign up, which is really interesting and very necessary, I think.
Exactly. And that's the primary way that we draw people into the program is through our OER grants and offering that support because it's important to acknowledge all the work that's involved in adapting and creating an OER. So the OER grant is a huge way of letting people know, like, hey, it's a lot of work, but we will support you both in project support, but also money.
Yeah, and I will mention, I know there's many of you who probably don't, whose institutions don't have, who you know, might not even support you in open, you know, might not have funding for grant programs, and you know, whatever other thing that they are not willing to support. But I do find that in general, there's actually a network manager in here. I won't single them out right now, but they actually shared something really valuable at a conversation that we had about how all they did was post the link to the webinar on their library page. And I remember last year there was a huge influx of users from this institution who came to my live webinars, and this network manager said that all they did was post the link to the webinars on the website. So it could be just as simple as that. People just don't know it exists, I think, most of the time, especially if you don't have a robust open program. So if Amanda's if Amanda's suggestion isn't testimony to that, I don't know what it is. So thank you, Amanda. And Debbie, I'll turn it over to you.
I'm going to say for Maricopa, our approach has been very similar to what Amanda described, right? We do district-wide announcements. We provide professional development around the use of Maricopa Open Digital Press, and promote it in that way. So we've gotten several people involved in that, from providing these kind of more district-wide, quick, short demos and information sessions. But I would say that the work done at the local college level has been even more fruitful in getting more people involved in the books, right? So the colleges that really put that point person into their Center for Teaching and Learning, they have provided a lot more information to their faculty more immediately about, hey, here's a source that you could use for an ebook, and here's how you do it, and look, here's where you can find other resources that you can bring in and really leverage that. And similarly with the libraries, kind of reminding people like, oh, look, here's another resource, or here's another way that you can leverage this other tool that we have available. I would say, in terms of spreading the word, like, we also offer a grant program to faculty, and the last couple of years we've focused those grants around development in this particular tool, and that certainly helped. But you know, it doesn't account for the vast number of books that have been built, right, or have been started on the network.
Yeah.
It's one layer, right?
Yeah.
And I would say word of mouth helps, but it also helps to have those advocates because those point people at the colleges and then at the district level, because then we're always bringing it into conversations, right? When I meet with other groups and they're looking for a tool that I think that the Pressbooks might help them, I tell them about it. And then that helps to spread the word about that resource.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, in a previous conversation, you had mentioned that your Maricopa was doing these lunch and learns, right? Where
Yes.
people were, you know, showing, like, you were doing like a quick 30-minute, like, you come, you learn about Pressbooks, or you learn about Open, and then, you know, you carry on with the rest of your day, and you can be eating while you're doing it.
Yes.
If you want to do something like learn while you eat, it's a great way to just sort of, and if you could talk about that just for a second, I would love to.
Sure. We did those for those first 2 years, right after we rolled out the Pressbooks, and we started to get questions like, well, what do I do, and how does this work, and I don't really understand it. So we set up these 30-minute lunch and learns, and we focused them around a different part of the Pressbooks implementation, right? So the first one is an overview, and the second one was, you know, how to clone a book, or how to bring a book in, or one was all about just how to find resources. And then we leveraged those point people at the different colleges, and to really build on their knowledge and showcase their understanding of the different aspects of the tool, and brought in a person from the college, and then ideally a faculty member so they could speak jointly about whatever aspect of it, of the Pressbooks. So a whole session on using H5P and why that helps your class, or a whole session on accessibility and how Pressbooks makes how using the Pressbooks is accessible for your students and things like that.
Mhm.
And they
Oh
were,
yeah,
oh, I was just gonna say they were fairly well attended.
yeah.
And we didn't run them last spring, but I think we'll probably pick them up again this year.
Great. Yeah. And I just want to mention that I think obviously, ideally, the people who are leading the Lunch and Learns are really well versed on the topic. If you're talking about cloning, you've cloned a book before. But I also want to mention that I've spoken to a lot of people who say, I have a 30-minute Zoom block, once a week where it's open and anyone can join. And they've been doing this since they, didn't know that much about Pressbooks, but it's a great way. It just gives a lot of time where if someone joins, you can talk about Pressbooks, or you can talk about Open, and you can talk about how to get started with your OER. Whereas if there's no avenue to do so in the first place, then there's no impetus to sort of start. So even to have avenues like that is great. And obviously, if it plumes into something as if it sort of grows into something as nice as Lunch and Learn, that's also great. So thank you to both of you for touching on that. And I want to save a little bit of time for the end for questions, but I wanted to talk to both of you about, so today I joined the call before all of you joined, and I realized Debbie and Amanda actually already knew each other, which I did not know about. And they've been working on which is so random and serendipitous, but I think is really awesome. And I think it's important enough to touch on. And I wanted to ask you both about the benefits of working on an extra institutional collaborative project, and how it's like to work with another institution that cares about open, and what kind of benefits that brings to your respective institutions. So either of you can start, or both of you can talk about it.
I'll jump in and say, so it's been an absolutely amazing experience for me to work with other institutions that have that are interested in open. And so the program that Amanda and I work together on is the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals Open Pedagogy Faculty Fellowship, which I still think is the longest title out there.
It's quite long.
And this is a program that was started at Montgomery College in Maryland, and has grown each year. Another institution comes in and joins the group, and so Maricopa joined, I think, in the third year, but I believe KPU joined them in their second year. And so now we're up to, Amanda, correct me, I think it's the fifth year, maybe. Yeah, who knows? And so, and it's grown quite a bit, and it is an international partnership, and we have folks from the States, we have institutions from Canada, and we also have an institution from Aruba, and I'm gonna say, Amanda, help me out, Indonesia, joining us this year. So it is growing quite a bit, and it's been a really wonderful experience, because not only do we get to do this work around open pedagogy and work with these other institutions and hear what's happening in other places, but it also builds that network, and builds a network of people that we can continue to collaborate with outside of that specific program. And I'll just say that as a result of that work, I know that when Maricopa got started with Pressbooks, I knew that KPU already had a Pressbooks program going, and I also knew that University of Arizona, and here I'll mention Cheryl, and I know she's on the call, and so was able to reach out to them and ask them kind of, how did you do this, and what did you do, and what, how would you structure it, and what would you recommend, and those kinds of things. But having those relationships that had been built separately through those other networks, then that really helped quite a bit, because then I didn't feel quite so isolated with, oh my gosh, now I have this new tool and I need to roll this out for 10 colleges, and how do I just,
Right, right.
help justify this expense and things like that.
Yeah, that's great. And that's sort of exactly what I wanted you to touch on, because it sort of speaks to how important it is to have or to know other people within the community, which is largely why we're hosting the session. So before we end the call, I want to turn over to Amanda and see if she has anything else to add about this question.
Yeah, that was a great answer, Debbie. I think I don't have a lot to add on in terms of that. In general, collaborating and working with other institutions, I think is great, because you get to little peek into what other people are doing and how things are working over there. And sometimes you look at what other people are doing and you're like, that's amazing. That would never work here. But there's other times where you look and you're like, that's amazing. How can I do that? And then you begin asking questions and having those conversations about like, okay, well, how did you start that? Like Debbie was saying. I would like to talk about our BC-wide Open Education Librarians Group. So this is a working group steering committee for librarians from, I think there's 5 or 6 different post-secondary institutions across BC. And we get together once a month and we just talk about what have we been working on in our institutions and sharing tools with each other, and also discussing common problems. So we'll say, hey, I'm having this problem, or this tool isn't quite working for me, or my institution is having trouble getting started doing this. And then we can talk about, what are the common issues. And that gives us a place to, one, we're not alone with our struggles. Other people are struggling with this as well. But it also lets us, we can then bring that information to BC Campus, which is the BC-wide government-funded institution that oversees and supports Open across BC. So then we can go to BC Campus and say, hey, we're having this problem. Let's work together and find a solution. So I think that is really, really key to it's one of the reasons why we've been successful, is because we have that support and communications with other universities who are trying to do Open as well. And then we can band together and figure things out.
Yeah. That's really great to hear. I think I think it was meant to be that I randomly invited both, well, not randomly, but selected both of you, and you managed to end the session on such a great note by talking about that collaboration and also how to get involved with others, regardless of whether you are brainstorming, commiserating, or thinking of the next brilliant idea. Thank you so much to both of you for your time and for sharing all of those answers. I hope that for all of you watching the recording or here live, these really sort of realistic and strategy points can serve you or help you identify with the stuff that Maricopa and KPU has been working on. And now I'll stop the recording, but thank you all for watching, and I'll take some questions, and we can take some questions from here.